All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We're diving into a question we've all been thinking about. How do links really impact local SEO? We've got your notes from Lunch Hour Legal Marketing, episode 126, and some really interesting research from AHS to help us out.
Yeah, get ready to challenge some assumptions we might have about links. We'll figure out what's true and what's just a myth in the world of links.
Perfect. So, in this episode of Lunch Hour Legal Marketing, Guy, one of the hosts, he keeps saying meh links.
Right?
It just made me curious, like, what's the deal with meh links?
It's a good way to describe an important point. Some SEO people are saying that links are not as important as they used to be, but Guy says that they're still really important, especially for local SEO. So he's basically saying that when websites are pretty similar in other ways, the quality and relevance of their links, even the ones that aren't from like super famous websites, can really make a difference.
Okay, that makes sense. But if we're not just going after those big name links, how does Google actually figure out how valuable a link is? I know there's this whole thing about domain authority being like the gold standard. Is that really true?
That's one of the myths we've got to bust right away. Domain authority is something made up by other tools, not by Google. It tries to guess how well a website might rank, but Google doesn't actually use it. If you just chase after high DA links without thinking about other things, you could end up going in the wrong direction.
So what should we be focusing on instead of DA? In the podcast, Guy talks about topically relevant and locally relevant links. Can you give us some like real world examples of what those look like?
Absolutely. Let's say you're a personal injury lawyer in Detroit. A link from a Detroit medical journal talking about, maybe the latest research on whiplash injuries. That would be both topically and locally relevant. But a link from the New York Times, while it's impressive, it might not be as helpful for local search results in Detroit.
That makes a lot of sense. It's all about context and reaching the right people. What about that classic debate? Quantity versus quality. Is it really just a numbers game when it comes to links?
No, not at all. Think about it. Would you trust a website that has a ton of links from random, kind of sketchy directories, or one that has a few solid links from well-known local organizations? Having a smaller number of high-quality, relevant links from different sources is way better than having a ton of generic, irrelevant ones.
That's a great point. It makes me think about how we decide what to trust in our own lives. We're more likely to trust a recommendation from a friend or someone we respect than just a random ad.
Exactly. And Google's algorithms are getting better and better at acting more human and prioritizing websites that seem trustworthy and authoritative.
Speaking of trustworthiness, let's talk about anchor text. That's the actual text that's used to make the link. Is it true that it absolutely must match your target keywords? I've heard that's super important.
Yeah, keyword-rich anchor text can help, but it's not everything. Actually, doing it too much can backfire and make Google think you're being spammy. A natural link profile includes a mix of different types of anchor text. Your brand name, generic phrases like click here, and just those natural mentions of your website.
So it's about finding that balance between being strategic and sounding natural. It seems like Google is getting better at figuring out when people are trying to cheat the system.
They are. And it's not just about pleasing Google, it's about making sure your users have a good experience.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about some of the actual link building tactics that Guy and Conrad talked about in the podcast. They had this interesting story about supporting a local barbecue restaurant that had a fire. Can you tell us more about that?
It's a great example of how getting involved in your community can naturally lead to valuable links. But Conrad pointed out something really important. You need to have something on your website for people to link to.
Right. So it's not enough to just donate money or show support. You need to give people something specific to link to.
Exactly. Let's say you're that lawyer supporting the barbecue joint. You could create a page on your website telling a story about the owner, how they're dealing with the fire, and how they're rebuilding. You could even have a video about how the community is coming together to help them. That gives other websites, like the local news or blogs, something real to link to.
And it shows that you're not just trying to get a link, you're actually invested in your community.
Right. Another thing they talked about is scholarship link building, which can be really effective when done right. But they said to avoid that generic mass email approach, instead try to create a scholarship that really means something to your local community.
I'm noticing a theme here. Authenticity and genuine connection seem to be super important for effective link building.
Absolutely. They also talk about sponsorships, finding and fixing broken links on other relevant websites, and even using events like Valentine's Day to support local businesses and create content that people can link to. It's all about being creative.
It's almost like they're encouraging a more heart-centered approach to SEO.
That's a great way to put it. They see link building as more than just a technical task. It's a chance to show your values online and make a positive impact on your community.
Okay, so we're starting to see that links are still valuable, but it's about quality over quantity and being more strategic and authentic. What I'm still wondering is, how does Google figure out which websites are truly relevant to, say, personal injury law in Detroit? How do they sort through all that information?
That's where it gets really interesting. Google uses a bunch of different signals to figure out how topically and geographically relevant a website is. For example, if you're that personal injury lawyer in Detroit, Google looks for patterns in the words you use.
So if my website consistently uses terms like car accident, slip and fall, medical malpractice, and mentions Detroit, that's a good sign.
Exactly. They're looking for those keywords and phrases that show what you're about. But it's not just about the words on your website. They also look at your Google business profile. Is your location clear? Are your practice areas listed correctly? And what about citations on other legal directories and websites? Are they all consistent with your business information?
It's like Google is piecing together a puzzle, looking for clues that confirm what your business is all about.
Exactly. They want to make sure they're sending people to websites that actually match what they're looking for. So being consistent across all those platforms is really important. Your website, your Google business profile, your citations, they should all tell the same story about who you are, where you are, and what you do.
This makes me think about local citations. They weren't really a focus in the podcast, but it seems like having your business listed accurately on those relevant directories and websites could be a really powerful signal for Google.
You're totally right. Citations are like votes of confidence for your business. They tell Google, hey, this business is legit, and they're located where they say they are.
So it's not just about being on the big directories like Yelp and TripAdvisor.
Those are definitely important, but don't forget about those smaller niche directories that are specific to your industry, like legal directories or local business associations. It's about making sure you're visible where your potential clients are already looking.
That makes perfect sense. Now, another thing that stood out to me in the podcast was Guy's emphasis on quality over quantity when it comes to links. He argued that you don't need a ton of links to rank well, just the right ones.
He's absolutely right. A small number of high-quality links from authoritative and relevant websites is way better than a huge pile of low-quality links from spammy or irrelevant websites. Think of it like this. Would you rather have a few close friends who really support you, or 1,000 acquaintances who barely know your name?
That's a great analogy. It shows how important it is to build genuine relationships with other businesses and organizations in your community.
Exactly. It's about creating a network of trust and helping each other out.
And speaking of trust, Guy and Conrad really stressed how important it is to avoid those shady link-building tactics, like buying links or participating in link schemes. It's tempting to look for shortcuts, but it sounds like those can do more harm than good.
Definitely. Google is constantly updating their algorithms to catch people trying to manipulate links, and they can penalize websites that try to cheat the system. It's not worth risking your reputation or your website's visibility for a quick fix.
So it's much better to focus on earning links naturally through great content, community involvement, and building those genuine relationships we talked about.
Exactly. Now, Guy and Conrad also shared some good content strategies that can attract links without you having to do a lot of work. One idea they talked about was creating ultimate guides. What did you think about that?
I love the idea of ultimate guides. They're a great way to show that you're an expert and give a ton of value to your target audience. What kind of ultimate guides would be good for a law firm?
Let's say you're a personal injury lawyer. You could create an ultimate guide to understanding your rights after a car accident, or an ultimate guide to choosing the right personal injury lawyer. These guides would be packed with information that potential clients would find really helpful. And because they're so comprehensive, other websites would be more likely to link to them as a valuable resource for their visitors.
It's all about becoming that go-to source of information in your field and attracting those meta links naturally.
Right. They also mentioned things like infographics and data visualizations. People love visuals, and they can make complex topics way more engaging and easy to understand. And we can't forget about the power of video.
Oh yeah, video. Guy and Conrad talked about making videos that answer common questions, explain legal stuff in simple terms, and even showcase client testimonials.
Exactly. Videos are awesome for grabbing attention and building trust, and they're easy to embed on other websites, which creates more natural link opportunities.
It seems like the message here is that content is still king when it comes to link building. But it can't just be any content. It has to be high quality, relevant, and engaging.
Absolutely. Guy and Conrad really stressed how important it is to create content that actually helps your target audience. It could be answering their questions, solving their problems, or just giving them useful information.
It's about creating content that people actually want to read, watch, and share.
Right. Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about that AHS study on the relationship between links and local search rankings. This study has some really interesting data that backs up what we've been talking about. What were some of the things that stood out to you from this study?
The thing that really jumped out at me was how strongly links correlated with local search rankings. Actually, the correlation was even stronger for local searches than for non-local searches.
That's a really big finding. It really emphasizes what Guy was saying. Even though the SEO world is changing all the time, links are still super important for being visible online, especially for businesses that rely on local customers. What else did you find interesting about the AHS study?
The AHS study also pointed out some interesting details about what kinds of links are most important for local SEO. It wasn't just about how many links you have, it was also about where those links are coming from.
Yeah. The study found that links from websites that are geographically close to your business matter more. Like if you're a plumber in Denver, a link from a Denver home improvement store's website would be more valuable than a link from some big national plumbing supply website.
That makes sense. It's like getting a thumbs up from your local community. If other businesses in Denver are linking to you, it tells Google that you're a trustworthy plumber in the Denver area. Did they find anything else about what types of links have the biggest impact?
They also found that links from websites that are related to your industry are really important. So for that Denver plumber, a link from a website about plumbing tips would be more valuable than a link from a website about, say, gardening.
It's all about context. The more closely a website matches your business, both in terms of location and what you do, the stronger the signal it sends to Google. This study really shows how important it is to have a focused and strategic approach to link building. It's not just about getting any link, it's about getting links from websites that actually make sense for your business and the people you're trying to reach.
Right. It's not about just throwing a bunch of links out there. It's about making connections that really matter.
Speaking of strategy, Guy and Conrad gave some really good advice on how to earn those valuable links. I really liked how they talked about making your values a part of your SEO strategy. They believe in a more heart-centered approach to SEO, which really spoke to me.
It's a really cool way to think about it. And one of the best examples they gave was the idea of supporting local charities or community groups. It's a win-win. You're helping your community and you're creating natural opportunities to get links.
They talked about sponsoring events, donating to causes that are important to you, volunteering your time. All these things can lead to mentions and links from the organization's websites, their social media, and even local news outlets.
Exactly. And it's not just about getting the link itself. It's about building real relationships with people and organizations in your community. Those relationships can lead to referrals, people talking about your business, and a better reputation, all of which can help your SEO in the long run.
It's like a good cycle. You do good things, you build relationships, and those relationships help you become more visible and trustworthy, both online and in the real world.
Exactly. It's about connecting your business goals with something bigger and making a positive impact.
Speaking of making connections, Guy and Conrad also talked about being an active part of online communities in your area. What did they suggest?
They recommended joining relevant Facebook groups, forums, and online publications, places where your ideal clients might be spending time online.
It's about finding those digital spots where your expertise can be helpful.
Exactly. By sharing what you know, answering questions, and leaving thoughtful comments, you can show that you're a leader in your community. This can lead to people naturally linking to your website as a resource.
It's not about spamming people with links. It's about being helpful and becoming a trusted source of information for your community.
Exactly. It's all about building that know, like, and trust factor that's so important for any business. Another strategy they talked about was creating content specifically for people in your local area.
Ah, yeah. Making your content relevant to local interests. What did they recommend for that?
They suggested writing blog posts about local events, guides to local resources, or even sharing your thoughts on local news or issues.
It's about showing that you're not just some random company, you're a real part of the community.
Exactly. And all these things, supporting local groups, being active in online communities, and creating locally relevant content, help you build a strong local link profile, which is what tells Google that you're a relevant and trustworthy business for people searching in your area.
And that's the goal, right? To show up in search results when it matters most. Guy and Conrad also talked about checking your link profile regularly. What did they mean by that?
They meant that it's important to see which websites are linking to you and making sure those links are coming from good sources.
Why is that so important? Isn't any link a good link?
Not really. You might accidentally get links from websites that could actually hurt your search rankings. These could be spammy websites, websites that do shady things, or even websites that have nothing to do with your industry.
Hmm.
Those links can give Google the wrong impression of your website.
So it's like doing a quality check on your links, making sure they're coming from good places. What are some tools or techniques we can use to check our link profile?
There are some great SEO tools out there that can help you analyze your backlinks and find any potentially harmful links. Once you find any links that look suspicious, you can contact the website owners and politely ask them to remove the link. If that doesn't work, Google has a tool called the Disavow tool, which lets you tell Google to ignore specific links when they're evaluating your website.
It's like saying, hey, Google, don't judge me by this bad link. I didn't want it.
Exactly. It's a way to protect your website from being associated with something negative. Now, switching gears a bit, Guy and Conrad also gave some tips for getting links from local media outlets. What are some of the strategies they shared?
They said it's important to write press releases that are actually newsworthy and relevant to the local community. They suggested finding ways to connect your business to things that are happening locally, trends in your area, or community projects.
It's about finding that angle that makes your story interesting and catches the attention of local journalists.
For example, if you're a personal injury lawyer and there's been a recent increase in car accidents in your area, you could write a press release with safety tips for drivers. Or, if you're a family law attorney and there's been a change in local child custody laws, you could write a press release explaining the new laws and giving advice to families.
Those are great examples. The key is to make your press release something that the local media outlet's audience will find relevant and useful. And of course, building relationships with local journalists is always a good idea.
Right. Guy and Conrad suggested attending local events, connecting with media professionals on social media, and even just reaching out to introduce yourself and your business.
It's all about those personal connections. Journalists are always looking for interesting stories and experts to talk to, and you never know when that relationship might lead to some good media coverage and links for your website.
It's about being proactive and building those relationships before you need them. Now, let's talk about something that always comes up when we talk about link building: directories.
Directories, the good and the bad of SEO. Guy and Conrad seem to have mixed feelings about directories.
I got that feeling too. They said that directories can be a good source of citations and even links, but they also said you shouldn't rely on them too much. Why is that?
Well, links from directories often aren't very strong. They're not coming from websites that are seen as super authoritative or closely related to your industry.
So they might not impress Google that much.
Right. And directories are also really competitive. You're basically competing with a ton of other businesses to be seen.
It's like trying to stand out in a crowd of people all wearing the same thing.
Exactly. And the main takeaway from Guy and Conrad is that it's way better to get links from unique and authoritative websites that are really connected to your business.
So directories can be a small part of your link building strategy, but they shouldn't be the main focus.
Right. Think of directories like a side dish, not the main course.
I like that analogy. Now, another interesting thing Guy said is that links aren't just about SEO. They can also bring people directly to your website. It's not just about rankings.
It's like having a sign that points potential clients right to your door.
Exactly. If you have a link on a website that your target audience visits, those people might click on that link and end up on your website. That direct traffic can help more people know about your brand, generate more leads, and even turn those leads into customers.
Right. It's about reaching more people and making it super easy for them to find you.
Mm.
So even if a link doesn't do a ton for your search rankings, it can still be valuable for attracting potential clients.
It's about looking at the big picture and seeing how links fit into your overall marketing plan. Speaking of plans, Guy and Conrad emphasized that link building should be something you do all the time, not just once in a while.
They compared it to taking care of a garden. You need to constantly tend to your link profile, just like you need to water, weed, and fertilize a garden regularly.
It's not a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Definitely not. You need to always be looking for new opportunities, taking care of the relationships you already have, checking your link profile, and changing your strategy as needed. It's about being proactive, flexible, and persistent.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. Speaking of marathons, we've covered a lot in this deep dive, but there's one more thing I want to talk about. Internal linking. Guy and Conrad mentioned it briefly. What is internal linking, and why is it important?
Internal linking means linking between different pages on your own website. It's a really important part of SEO, but people often forget about it. It helps both users and search engines navigate your website and find all the great content you have.
So it's not just about getting links from other websites, it's also about making sure the information flows well within our own website.
Exactly. A good internal linking strategy can make it easier for search engines to find and index all your pages. It also helps spread the value of your inbound links to all the pages on your site.
So it's like making the most of the links you've already earned.
Precisely. So how do we actually go about creating a strong internal linking strategy?
That's a great question. Tell me more.
The most important thing is to focus on relevance. When you're linking between pages, make sure the content is related to each other. For example, if you have a blog post about choosing a personal injury lawyer, link it to the page on your website that talks about your personal injury law services.
It's about guiding visitors through your website in a natural way, making those logical connections between different pieces of content.
Right. You're making it easier for people to find what they need and stay engaged with your website. Another important tip is to use descriptive anchor text.
So instead of using generic phrases like click here, we should use keywords that actually describe what the page is about.
Exactly. That helps both users and search engines understand what the link is about and where it goes. It also makes your content better by giving more information and context.
This is all making a lot of sense. Are there any other tips for internal linking that we should know?
One common mistake is doing too much internal linking. It's good to have internal links, but if you overdo it, it can actually make each link less valuable and make your content look like spam.
So just like with external links, quality over quantity is key.
Absolutely. Another really important thing is to make sure your most important pages are getting the most internal links. These are usually your main service pages, landing pages, or any content that's designed to get people to take action.
It's like giving your best content a little extra boost.
Exactly. By being strategic with your internal links, you can guide both users and search engines to the pages that are most important for your business goals.
Wow, I had no idea internal linking was so powerful.
It's often the small things that make a big difference.
Now, before we move on to our final thoughts, Guy and Conrad said one last thing that I wanted to touch on. They talked about making sure your SEO strategy aligns with your core values. Can you tell me a little more about what they meant by that?
They believe that SEO shouldn't just be about trying to trick algorithms. It should be about representing your business authentically and connecting with your community in a way that feels real.
It's like they're promoting a more ethical and values-driven approach to SEO.
Exactly. They believe that when you focus on doing good, building real relationships, and providing real value to your community, the links and the rankings will come naturally. It's about attracting links and clients through genuine connections and shared values.
That's a powerful way to look at it. I really like the idea of seeing SEO not just as a technical task, but as an opportunity to make a positive impact on the world.
It's about creating a business that you're proud of, both online and offline.
This has been such a helpful deep dive into local SEO. We've learned so much, and I feel like we've really uncovered some valuable insights from Guy and Conrad.
I agree. They've given us a ton of practical advice and thought-provoking ideas. And now we have a much better understanding of how links affect local SEO and how to build a stronger, more authentic presence online.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some of the key takeaways that our listeners should remember?
Well, the most important thing is that links are still really important for doing well in local SEO. Even though the SEO world is always changing, links are still a big sign to Google that your website is relevant and trustworthy.
And it's not just about getting any link. It's about getting high-quality links from websites that are relevant to your business, both in terms of location and what you do.
Right. It's all about those meaningful connections. And building a strong link profile takes time, effort, and a good strategy.
It's about creating valuable content, building real relationships, and being an active part of your community.
Absolutely. And it's about making sure your SEO strategy reflects your core values.
It's about doing the right thing, building trust, and providing value. And when you do those things, the links and the rankings will come naturally.
Exactly. It's a more holistic and sustainable way to approach SEO, one that focuses on making a positive impact both online and offline.
Now, before we say goodbye, I want to go back to something Guy and Conrad said about how SEO is always changing.
They said we shouldn't get too caught up in chasing the latest algorithm updates or trying to trick the system.
Right. It's easy to get lost in all the little details of SEO, but they reminded us that the basics are still important.
Create good content, make your website easy to use, and build real relationships. Those are the things that will always matter.
They see SEO as a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. And they encourage businesses to focus on building a strong online presence that can handle any changes that Google throws their way.
So instead of stressing out over every little algorithm change, focus on the things you can control. Creating great content, making your website user-friendly, and building those strong connections.
Right. Focus on building that solid foundation, one step at a time.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive into the world of local SEO.
I agree. We've learned so much, and I hope our listeners feel more confident and clear about how to approach link building.
Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought to think about. We've talked a lot about the technical side of links and how they affect SEO, but what if we look at them in a different way? What if, instead of thinking of links as just SEO signals, we thought of them as ways to connect with people, share knowledge, and build a stronger community? That's a really cool way to think about it. Links become more than just these technical things for SEO. They become like connections in our community.
Yeah, it's like shifting from just thinking about getting something to focusing on building relationships. And I think that's what Guy and Conrad were trying to say in the podcast. Building a successful online presence isn't just about tricking algorithms. It's about making real connections and having a positive impact.
Exactly. And that takes us back to where we started with those mail links. They may not be super flashy or come from huge websites, but they represent actual connections with your community, the local businesses, organizations, and people who want to see you succeed.
Those mail links are what create a strong and lively local network. They're like endorsements from your neighbors, referrals from people you work with, shout-outs from happy customers, those authentic connections that make people trust you.
So as you continue learning about local SEO and link building, remember this. It's not just about getting links. It's about building relationships.
It's about finding those places where your skills and passions can meet the needs of your community.
It's about asking yourself, what's my unique story? What local connections can I make? How can I contribute to my community in a way that naturally brings in those valuable links and helps me build a business that's both successful and meaningful?
Because in the end, that's what it's all about. Building a business you're proud of, a business that reflects what you believe in and makes a positive difference in the world.
That's a great point to wrap up on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back next time to explore more important ideas.